What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. I'm Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. Actually, we're not doing a specific whiskey today. We're doing two whiskeys. I've got a double review. We're looking at both the Talisker and the Clynelish Distillers Edition. Stick around. Alright, it's double whammy today. I've got two whiskeys in from two different brands, both under the Diageo portfolio and both Distillers Edition. I have the Clynelish and I have the Talisker, and I thought that would be a fun side-by-side. You guys know I love Talisker, although the tin has been disappointing me recently, as has a lot of their budget range in general, but I do remember enjoying the last Distillers Edition that I had. Clynelish, on the other hand, is a brand that doesn't put out too much stuff aside from the 14-year-old. I do like the 14-year-old, not as much as a lot of other people out there. I do find it batchy. It's never blown me away, but it is good. And outside of the 14, I haven't tried too much stuff from them. I've tried a handful. I've tried the DE before, and of course, the Firecat. That one was way too expensive and not very good. I think the newer one, the Jazz one, is doing a little bit better in terms of reviews, but haven't tried it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about those. The DEs, or Distillers Edition, as I said, these are from Diageo. They are limited annual releases from a variety of distilleries in Diageo's portfolio. And traditionally, what they did is they would take their standard bottling as a base spirit and then add a finish to it. However, they have changed their approach in recent years because the old bottlings would give us a vintage. So we'd have the distillation year, so we'd have an idea of how old the whiskey was. And with the more recent bottlings, they've stopped doing that. So for example, with the old Taliskers, they used the 10-year-old as the base spirit. We knew our bottling was at least 10 years old, and then they added the finish. For Clynelish, they would have used the 14-year-old as the base, then added the finish. So are they still using that approach? Well, maybe, but also maybe not. What I can tell you is that they stopped telling us. So we don't have the distillation year, we don't have the bottling year, we don't know how old these are. We don't know much. I've heard that they still are using the same approach and these bottles are the same age as they always were, but then why would they stop telling us? The fact of the matter is, I don't know. If any of you guys out there have any details on that, you can let us know down below. Anyway, for information that we do have, let's talk casks. So our Talisker is finished in Amoroso Sherry Seasoned American Oak casks. Clynelish finished in Oloroso Secco Seasoned American Oak casks. Now, as I said, I have had both of these before, but those were bottles from back in the day when they were vintages, so the more recent stuff I actually haven't tried. So let's see where I land on the modern iterations of these bottlings. Let's jump into our review. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that would be greatly appreciated. For our specs, Talisker, as usual, 45.8%. It is probably chill filtered. It is colored. For the Clynelish, we have 46%. Possibly chill filtered. Usually we don't need it at 46%, but it still might be. Colored, yeah, probably. The fact is we just don't know. They don't tell us anything. On the nose of our Talisker, we get the house style pretty much right away. So we get the sea spray, the gentle peat, the pepper, the minerals, and then on top of that, we get our Amoroso sherry casks. Those casks offer up sweet red fruits, sweet cherries, oranges, maple glazed bacon. Okay, there's also raisins, there's nuts. It's a straightforward nose, but it is nice. On the palate and finish, this is peppery up front, and then the expected like limestone and mineral note kicks in. And of course, we have a good amount of cask influence here. So first off, I'm getting a lot of very sweet berries. What type of berry specifically? Yes. I don't know, let's just say berry jam in general. There's also orange rind. There's some butterscotch. There's some salty coastal notes. It's a medium finish. On the nose of the Clynelish, this is definitely very different. It's very sherry forward. It's gently sweet. It is not cloying. There's enough spice in here that you could actually convince me that this was matured or finished in European oak casks instead of American ones. There's lots of pepper. There's nutmeg. There's also honey, sultanas, pear, cereal. There's even a very faint graininess to this. It's nice. On the palate and finish, we get fruit and spices on the arrival. Again, this is pretty spice forward. And that's not to say that this is like hot or burning. It's just like the flavors of those spices. So we get stuff like black pepper, we get chili, even paprika, which is interesting. There's heaps of fruit in here too. There's red apple skins, there's orange oil, there's pears, there's guava, and there's a floral honey. All right, so these are both pretty good. They're very different from one another, and for me, there is one that's better, but we'll get to that later. We call that a hook here in Hollywood. It's not my first rodeo. Done heaps of rodeos. Save the hook to the end. However, I will say up front that there's one of these that's far more unique than the other, and that's going to be the Clynelish. The Talisker here, it does what Talisker does, and it does it pretty well. The Clynelish, on the other hand, is far less traditional. The flavor profile is more like out of left field, and meanwhile our Talisker, it's from the right field. The Clynelish is just far more unexpected. It's actually quite a spicy whiskey. As I said, we get like black pepper, we get chili in here. There's a sweetness to it, but it's quite mild, it's quite gentle, and it's counterbalanced by a very faint bitterness. Like, you know how guava can be sweet, but you'll also have that faint bitterness in the back? It's kind of along those lines. As for the Talisker, it's much more straightforward, but that's fine. Talisker can be good, even when they keep things simple. We have a nice sherry touch here, nice berries in here. It works. So, which one of these is better? It's the Clynelish. The Talisker is good, but it's by the numbers. It's one of those whiskeys where if you described it to me and asked me to picture it in my head before I had it, I wouldn't be far off. Which again is fine, but yeah, it is more predictable. This tastes more engineered, more rounded, and I think a lot of people will get along with it. It's definitely smoother and easier than the Clynelish, but it's less interesting. As for the Clynelish, if you think this one is going to taste like the 14-year-old, it doesn't. Now, a lot of the base flavors are still in there. You can dig them out. And thankfully, our casks didn't completely overwhelm the Clynelish character. So we do have a nice balance between cask and distillate here. This stuff is not waxy like the 14-year-old, although to be fair, the current 14-year-olds are not waxy like the 14-year-olds anymore, so that does track. In terms of casks, they have left a substantial mark, but as I said, it's an interesting one. I think the sherry is a very nice touch here. As I said, I like the spices. I think it's deep and complex. More so than what you would expect from a finish in American seasoned oak casks, but it is those things. It's deep and complex. I think that's the name of a Bowmore. So yeah, this just has an interesting character. So where the Talisker takes us in a very engineered direction, this is much more of a breath of fresh air from Diageo here. We have good distillate, good cask play. I do actually prefer this one to the regular 14, and I even prefer it to the Firecat. I think our distillate and our fruity notes will appeal to most of you out there. However, as I said, there is a spiciness to this, so I'm not sure it's for everybody, but I think a lot of you who are looking for more complex whiskey will appreciate this one. If we're comparing these to the old bottlings, I would say that the Clynelish is actually as good as I remember it, but I don't remember it clearly. It's been like 6 or 7 years. As for the Talisker, probably about the same time frame. Or no, probably less. Probably like 4 or 5 years. Anyway, it's been a minute. The Talisker is not as good as I remember. I could say that about most modern Taliskers, especially the budget line. It's not as good. It's a little bit simpler. For score, I'm going to give the Clynelish a solid 86. I think it's a really good whiskey. The Talisker gets an 83. Both good whiskeys, but one is substantially more interesting and more enjoyable than the other. Now, for value, before we jump into that, I do want to say a quick thank you to all my channel members, all my patrons. Guys, thank you so much for the support. And if you want to help out, if you want to help keep the channel financially sustainable and independent, there are a number of ways that you can help. I've got both Patreon and PayPal linked down below. And once again, to those of you who are already supporting me, thank you very, very much. Now let's talk about value. So pretty good value on both of these bottles. One thing to remember, especially with Diageo, it seems, I'm in a very, very cheap whiskey market, Scotch market, so I do have a skewed sense of value. Now, obviously, I can only speak from my own perspective, so for me, price-wise, Clynelish is 65 US, and the Talisker is 50 US. Now, the Clynelish, I think, is great bang for buck. I think you're getting a very interesting, complex, and fun whiskey for that price. Definitely worth that. You're probably going to be asked to pay more. I don't know how much more, I don't know what it goes for in your market, but as long as the price is reasonable, it is a whiskey I recommend. The Talisker, on the other hand, for me, at 50 US, I really can't complain. I think it's still good value. You will likely be asked to pay more. And again, I'll leave that up to you. I don't know what the price will be. Just know that it's a less interesting whiskey, and I don't think it's a particularly interesting Talisker. And that brings us to the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As I said, I've got both Patreon and PayPal down below, and I want to hear your thoughts on both of these bottles. So have you tried them? Have you tried any of the recent ones? Have you not tried them since the vintages? What are your thoughts on them? Let me know all of that down below. Finally, down below, you can also let me know what you want to see me review down the line, and I will keep that in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.